Good afternoon. We call this meeting to order. This is the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Workshop. Today is Monday, February 9th, and it is 1 p.m. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we'd like to take a moment of silence to reflect on the men and women serving in our armed forces and our first responders. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see everyone today, and I'm glad it's warm outside. So those are my two glads. We're going to jump right into this and start with our fiscal year 2026 through 35 Transit Development Plan project update.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Dan Nicholas. I'm from General Services and Transportation Department, joined by Trevor Martin from Transportation and John Roberson from the Center for Urban Transportation Research. We are here. You may remember back in November timeframe, John is here and presented to you the beginning of our feedback session to collect information from yourselves, other public officials, and the general public on development of our 10-year plan. He is back today to share the results of that initial round of feedback and to solicit your feedback again for how we can adjust and move forward on this plan. We'll be back, I believe it's the second meeting in March, with the final plan, as well as kind of a general overview of transportation. So thank you again, and I'm going to hand it over to John to go over the results of our feedback so far.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Commissioners, for your time. I'm Jonathan Roberson with the Center for Urban Transportation Research, and this is the update to the 10-year Transit Development Plan. We'll go over where the project is, looking at some existing conditions, some results of our first public outreach, and take a look at some of the potential needs we've identified and what's coming next with additional outreach and prioritization and financial plan. Pictured here is Flagler County's transportation service area, which is the entire county. This project started last September, and as Daniel mentioned, we're getting near the end. We would be looking for an adoption of a plan by the board next month. Real quickly, just thought we'd give you an update on what we've seen with the existing Flagler County public transportation services. You can see in the map that existing services for the elderly and low income, disabled, and so on, and seniors is up kind of centered around where most of the population lives in central, east, northeast county. Ridership is beginning to rebound to pre-pandemic levels. But as you see in the green chart, population is projected to be almost 200,000 or more by 2050. So we see a county that's growing, but that already has some existing transportation activity in many different areas here. There's also a lot of other populations in the county that are supportive of public transportation now and in the future, including in the upper left where the households are most large, where the poverty rate is the highest, and the upper right. Lower right gives you an idea of the households, the spread of households that don't have a vehicle, and to the lower left, where the multifamily housing structures are most clustered. So these are additional areas where current demand for transportation exists and is expected later. In terms of employment and commuting, it's an interesting situation with Flagler County. The employment destinations in the green to the map and to the right are somewhat spread out, including some activity in Volusia County. And in the table in the middle, in the graphic, The workers in the county, you have over 13,000 folks coming into the county to work, over 14,000 that live and work in the county, and almost 33,000 folks commute outside of the county for work. But that still leaves a number of people needing employment-based transportation in the county. The other thing we found that's telling, this kind of goes with the population growth, but we saw some numbers for 2050 that showed your industrial, service, and commercial sectors for employment are set to double by 2050. And that's great stuff, but will folks have mobility options? That's one thing to consider. We also took a look at the current services and found that compared to some other counties, county-run transit agencies in Florida, mostly similar population size, and what we found was the Flagler County is running a pretty efficient system right now compared to these peer counties, peer agencies that are running similar service. And I won't go over the whole chart, but you can see a lot of green, and that means they're basically, Flagler County is running more trips and a more efficient service with a few less vehicles than most of these other counties. And this bodes well for any additional services that might be added in the future, that the county is doing a good job maximizing their existing resources. So as part of this planning process, this is a county is required to do this every 5 years. We had a phase 1 public outreach, and we had an online social media survey. We surveyed current passengers and drivers, interviewed a lot of folks in the community, and presented to the MPO board and to the Palm Coast City Commissions. And we got a lot of great feedback. We spoke with the Workforce Development Board, the state DOT, some elected officials, and some municipalities as well. But what we heard the most when talking to folks about transportation themes in this county was there's a limit to the current service that's just for eligibility-based folks. There was some concern about how the way Flagler's laid out and the communities and the cul-de-sacs and where the jobs and people live, it's kind of difficult maybe for public transportation to work. There was definitely some preference for potentially adding some kind of flexible service that goes through all these different areas, and some kind of service that matches people's work schedules, second shift, and so on. There was interest in the county continuing to pursue the Federal Transit Administration 5307 funding, which would be new funding, interest in new technology, more awareness of the service and the brand, and supportive infrastructure like bus stops. In addition, folks we talked to from the public were also concerned about the lack of service for the general public. A lot of folks from the municipalities wanted to see more interaction with their activities, and there was definitely some interest in improving the current service, as that it takes too long to schedule and up to 2 weeks in advance. And again, will something go where people need to go and where they live? So with our first online survey result, this was countywide, and it was limited to only people that were in the county. We had 390 surveys completed. And interesting, the table to the right is, even though we asked non-riders, which is many people that took that survey, would you use any kind of expanded public transportation options? And 54% said yes, 25% said no, and 25% said not sure, and 21% said no. So there does seem to be some support for maybe some kind of other services. And when asked what type of service they'd like to see, that's over in the other table, there was a lot of interest in some kind of fixed route service or same-day scheduled service, connections to neighboring counties, Saturday service, and point-to-point on-demand service. We were able to survey 86 of the current passengers, and that was a pretty good return. Many of them had positive comments to say about the existing services, the quality of the drivers and staff, the gratitude for the service, clean buses. There was concerns about potentially having more drivers, about the long wait times, some communication improvements, and the speed. They also are most interested in seeing some kind of additional same-day scheduled service, Saturday service, point-to-point on-demand service, some weekday evening service, go a little later, and some fixed route. And the drivers we surveyed kind of elaborated on the same thing. They wanted to see some improvements on information board for dialysis trips, reminders for passengers on how to properly cancel trips, compensation for them to obtain a CDL, and so on. They were also interested in seeing some kind of flexible same-day scheduled trip service, fixed route service, point-to-point on-demand service being added. So this was a pretty good information to get from the folks that drive, from the folks that currently use the system, and from the general public. And again, like I summarized, we found that the county is managing the current services efficiently, but needs more staffing to maintain and improve the current system. The existing services need some improvements with availability, scheduling, number of daily trips, and so on. There's no doubt that there seemed to be an appetite for regularly scheduled fixed route and same-day scheduled flexible service, point-to-point on-demand service that operates on weekdays, evenings, and possibly weekends, and supportive bus infrastructure for such services. So that was kind of what we got from the Phase 1 public outreach. So putting that all together, part of our job in doing this for transit agencies and counties is to look at maybe the potential services that might meet the demand that we see based on demographic growth and public opinion. One idea we looked at was some proposed fixed route considerations for the county. And these are planning level assumptions. We're going to look a little more at the funding and the ridership and the demand for it in the next phase of public transportation, the popularity of it. But the idea is, would some kind of fixed route service that operates on the weekdays at these times, Saturdays, possibly Sundays, every 60 minutes, with a bus stop every quarter mile and $1 fare. These are some of the corridors that came up first. Some of them are much more around densely populated areas than others, and we'll get to that in a bit. The red route is kind of your main corridor, Moody Corridor, with a connection out to hidden trails. The Palm Coast Parkway, the pink route, is also, when you take a look at all the jobs and residential up there, it's pretty popular, as well as the blue Belterre Parkway. But this is just our sketch of some potential fixed route considerations. In a county this size, this is not something that's all done at once, but it's all potential corridors in a 10-year time period. What we also heard loud and clear from folks, and we see being done in a lot of other communities, is some kind of on-demand service considerations. Again, these are planning level assumptions depending on funding, policy, and more input and ridership analysis. But these are zones where there'd be some kind of point-to-point on-demand services, maybe same-day schedule, and that might connect to fixed routes or move from, folks can move from zone to zone. These are some zone concepts we came up with in our initial analysis based on current kind of densities, job and residential, and future as well. And it would be a little bit like fixed route, but probably double the fare, and considerations would have to be made about transferring through zones. And rural areas, the rest of the county, in theory, that would be served by current services. Put it all together for a 10-year transit plan. This was one concept we wanted to discuss with you today of a mixture of these systems of fixed route and MOD zones. And this is really what we got from the analysis and the public, things we're seeing in the community. So as we enter this phase 3 kind of the study, what is the final network going to look like? So we're going to be able to take a look at estimated ridership for you, public opinion in this third phase, this current online survey, the financial feasibility with existing and new grant sources that could be pursued, and some a process to prioritize the projects. Like I said, for a county this size, the funding for all of these things would be difficult to find. And so if there's a way to prioritize these things, that's what we generally recommend at the end of these plans. Any questions on this so far? Okay.
Good morning. Good morning this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for being here. I enjoyed the time that the one-on-one. It was good conversation. What's the smallest population that has a fixed route bus system?
If you'll excuse me, I'll go back to. These peer counties are the smallest that have some kind of fixed route or on-demand response services. That's one of the reasons why I chose them. The data you're seeing in front of you is for the existing services, but Citrus County has 2 or 3 fixed routes, I believe, and a couple of on-demand type of routes. That data on how they operate that is not in this table. This is demand response only. But Hernando County has, I'm sorry, Hernando County's not in this. Hernando County is one that has about 8 fixed routes and is about 170,000. Indian River County is another one where there's about 12 or 13 fixed routes, but they don't do any zonal service. So there's a little bit of variety across these counties. Charlotte County is perhaps most like Flagler, where they have 3 on-demand service zones, and then that's the only type of service they operate, plus the demand response like Flagler does now. If we're going to put more detail about these guys in the report, but that gives you an idea of. I wanted to make sure that the peer agencies were smaller counties near this Flagler County size, but also had some fixed route out there. And one of the things Charlotte County does is they can contract out their on-demand service, or they can use their demand response vehicles now. So there's efficiencies there, but that's all something we'll detail later. But did that answer?
Yeah, I didn't see within the data, the different areas that you had specifically called out, on-demand, fixed travel, or fixed routes.
Correct.
I'm just kind of thinking in my head as we progress, who do we emulate as we grow? Who's where we currently in 10 years, who's there now, so we can look at what they're doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, what will be in the next phase of this plan will be the fixed route data for these agencies and a few others. I believe Hernando County and Martin County, I will add to that. So you'll be able to see what a county-based fixed route system costs, and in some cases, how you don't want to do it, cost-wise.
Right. There's
some pretty expensive systems out there, and it'll give you a good idea of where you are now in your costs for this mode, and some costlier fixed routes in a few other areas. Some counties do it very efficiently as well, and you'll see that as kind of a model to emulate. But sorry, I didn't include that here because you're not at fixed routes, so we'll have a kind of an aspirational peer table and analysis that'll give you some guidance on that.
I think the only other question was, how are they funded, and what kind of support does the local government add to the other grants?
In almost every
Their
instance,
fees.
all of these counties are 5307 agencies, which is an additional FTA source that the county is close to being qualified for. And there's a little bit of local match required for that. Some of that local match can come from existing grant sources. Some of it comes from general funds in almost every case. And that's another reason why I wanted to show county agencies and not like city, some large cities like Gainesville or something. But that will be all in more detail, and these are great questions. And when we do a financial plan for you, we want to make sure those elements are set out. What are the what are some of the lowest hanging fruit in grant funding that the county could go for to do the top priorities. And again, some of that isn't being pursued yet, but it's underway. So we definitely try to put that whole picture together for you in the final financial plan.
Thank you.
That was basically on that slide, that was basically my question, but we're not there yet. Is what's the delta between the revenue from the fares and the cost to operate the system or the services? How do you make it up? So it sounds like it's grants, sounds like it's general fund.
Yes, yes.
Will you have a breakdown of the fare cost? So it's great, I guess it would be the operating expenses?
Yes, yes. What you see here is what it's costing the county now to operate the service. The per capita trip cost is $18.44. The per trip cost is $27. As you can see, that is way less than all of the other counties. And the fare box recovery ratio, to your question, second from bottom, and the efficiency measure is also the highest among the peer agencies. Fares typically return between 4 and 10% per trip. But fares are part of your local match, so they go back to your grants so you can, you get 2 or 3 times the dollar for every local dollar with state and federal grants. So these are great questions. In almost every metric, the county's really more cost efficient right now for current services. What's interesting about this is the demand response mode is some of the services we're proposing, you really could be just as efficient doing some of those. You could have a third party do it, or you could have kind of the existing resources close to it. Like Charlotte County, they operate their vans that are doing this demand response service to also go all into the zones and pick people up for other activities. So that's why we love this data. It's the data every agency has to report to the federal government every year, and it's kind of an accounting based. So yes, the idea is to have a higher and higher fare box recovery ratio every year. That usually means you're doing efficient service and getting a lot of trips. So there's a lot to dig in on this table. I apologize, but there'll be a lot more in this financial plan coming up. But these are great questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for your service on this. We've spent a lot of time in this discussion. I just had one thought. We're basically centralizing it in those 4 regions in the Palm Coast area. But 32% of the workers live here. So I would assume that those would be the services that we're most focused on at this point for our local service area. Am I wrong? Or
Correct. What we saw was in this, where these zones are, and mostly was where we see the most activity. So to operate the most efficient service now, which is kind of what you do, and in the future, you want to stick with, at least at first, where the most trips are and where you can, multi-load. The brown route here, the express route to the Votran job centers is, I think certainly longer term, but it does give a nod to the commute outward for folks to the neighboring county. There's less to St. Johns County than Volusia County. I didn't have that table up here, but so yeah, the idea is the further you go on a route or a zone, the less efficient it becomes. Mm-hmm. So if possible, we try to recommend a priority on the zones that would work best. In the early data, I was looking at the southwest zone and the northeast zone trigger the most potential trips based on the amount of jobs, the density, and residential offhand. But we'll put that kind of prioritization together for you to look at in the final plan. And with financing potential costs and limitations to available grant money, we would also bring that picture to you too my guess is there's a few things that are real possible that could be done with the additional FTA 5307 funding. But that's what we're doing now, just like today, is going out to the public to get an opinion, folks' opinions on these potential alternatives. These are really service considerations. We're also asking people, hey, did we get something wrong? Is there some other type of service you'd like to see? Is there something south along I-95 near, Volusia County? That area will be growing too. So they'll have the ability in this online survey to be able to ask about additional places that they may need service. We're presenting we did a public workshops last week at Bunnell and Palm Coast Community Center. We got some really good feedback on both improving the existing system and expanding, offering some additional services for everybody. We're at the TDLCB Wednesday and the MPO meetings after that. So yes, this is the phase 2 online survey that you may have seen, and this is open until the end of the week. And it's generally asking people first about what improvements they'd like to see ranked, and then they're asked to rank the actual alternatives I just showed you, but also to point out on a map any other services or areas they'd like to see served. So I think you're going to get some excellent feedback along with our analysis coming on what folks think of these service considerations. And really, to close it out, this all kind of comes together to this phase 2 public outreach to a final plan that you would see in March, where we get you the summary of all the public involvement, all the analysis, ranking of the alternatives based on public opinion analysis and costs, and a financial plan that you can dig into on a lot of these details. This is required by the state to be approved by the board and also to be presented to the TPO board. And so really that's it. I'm hoping your constituents, and you've seen the survey information being blasted out. It's been out on the county's social media and public involvement information. Their staff has been fabulous. And we were able to get all the municipal public information staff to post it on their web pages and social media too. So I've taken a lot of your time though. Any thoughts? I really appreciate the questions.
Any final comments? No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here in March. All right, moving on to the impact fee update study staff report and an impact fee presentation. Mr. Mingle.
Afternoon, Adam Engel, Growth Management Director. I've put a few slides together that I think summarize kind of where we've been, where we're hoping to head with this. And so we've got workshops we held before. We did adopt the impact fee last time. We had the 2 workshops, so we were kind of going above and beyond what was required in the statute. Study last time did cost us right at $150,000. The new impact fees were calculated at the maximum rate. We had some discussion about, were they reduced in some way? We went back and we looked, and those were adopted at the maximum rate. We did have both the transportation and the parks impact fees, though, were phased in over a 4-year period, if you remember. And so we had just a small discount, and then at the end of the 4-year period, it was the full recommended rate within this study was what's there and what's prevailing now. So that's what we're at now, is for all of those impact fees that we did adopt, the transportation, parks and recreation, fire rescue, and then separate EMS, law enforcement, and library. We did not adopt public buildings. We do have those exemptions in there. We also had that come up, I think, a couple of times. No alterations or expansions without adding units don't generate an impact fee. Accessory replacement structures with no additional square footage or living units added in, occurring on the same parcel. Mobile home replacements on the same parcel Government buildings are also excluded from the impact fees, and last, affordable housing, subject to qualifications and conditions. Those conditions being mainly the covenants, that if you enter into an affordable housing situation, I think it's 15 and 30 years, I think is what we have in our land development code. Don't quote me on it, but there's different qualifiers there that have a covenant that goes along with the affordable housing that makes them exempt. If you then offer it up, you pull out of that situation where you're agreeing to the affordable housing covenant, then your impact fees are due. Florida statute has these phase-in limits, and as I've read this, and as I think I've told you before, if you make the decision to increase your impact fees, no matter what, one way or the other, statute says you've got to do the study. And so that's straight up, you got to do the study. So this is broken into two parts. There are statutory phase-ins. So at the top, that top section is what you can do without doing the extraordinary circumstances determination. And so that, that one way or the other, we're still doing a study. Top part requires a plan for imposition, collection, use of the increased impact fees. Statute says we've got to have that, just can't walk into it without a plan. Impact increase of less than or equal to 25% of the current rate. Statute says we must do it in 2 equal annual increments. Impact fee increases greater than 25, but equal to less than or equal to 50% of the current rate must be made in 4 equal annual increments. Phase-in increases cannot exceed 50% of the current rate. Those impact fee increases allowed no more than once every 4 years, and then no retroactive increases are allowed. So those are the statutory bumpers that we've got right now. And this next section is the one that says, okay, all that stuff I just said, here's the exceptions to that. And so first you got to make a determination that extraordinary circumstances exist. That's a demonstrated need study. Your data must be local and current. So within the last 12 months prior to adoption, you have that demonstrated need to exceed the phase-in limitations. When we do this, we've got to have at least the 2 public workshops that are specifically devoted to the extraordinary circumstances. And then if we choose this route also, we have to have a unanimous vote of the board, not a supermajority, unanimous. Implementation through at least 2, but no more than 4 equal annual increments. So we still have those annual divisions that are there, at least 2, no more than 4. And then you cannot exceed your statutory phase-in limits if no impact fee increase has occurred in the past 5 years. And so including hurricane disaster years from the 5-year limitation. So there's a bit of a clock that's there. And so that's a little weird on that last sentence, but that you can't do it if you hadn't already done an increase before and recently. So we had our joint workshop, the March 6th, we talked about this. We had some data that we presented to you before that talked about population. We have that on the record for November 17th. We do have that those limitations that are out there, the once every 4 years, new study, local data, increase requires that demonstrated need study that comes back with extraordinary circumstances. We've got everybody basically on about the same schedule that appears to us in North Florida. We've got recent ones, City of Palm Coast adopted theirs. They did have some criticism that's still kind of shaking itself out with the HBA right now, where they said the extraordinary circumstances do exist for them. St. Johns County had their increases, and they also used our same consultant from our last effort update, Vanessa, and so they did the ones who did the updated study now. Of note is their road impact fee became a multimodal transportation impact fee. Law enforcement became law enforcement and correctional facilities, had some capacity for the jail. And then there's a new conservation and open space impact fee that they adopted, and they also phased them in over a 4-year period. You can imagine where I'm heading with those in kind of our example with St. Johns County. We got this here that the general principles. The main thing I'm trying to say there is that you have the statutory rules that are there. The monies free up general fund monies for other purposes. So if you have your impact fee coming in, it's capital monies coming in, must be dedicated to capital projects that are included in your capital improvements plan. But you can use those monies then dedicated for those things related to growth. Remember that terminology, rational nexus, that's out there. And so the big thing is have something in mind, have some projects in mind. Our impact fees, I think, still are on a 15-year schedule, so that the other challenge can be, and how challenging is this? You have to spend it within 15 years. You think that's not as hard as it sounds, but if you have a transportation fee, as an example, with 2 districts, an east and a west, you've got to expend those funds kind of on a rolling basis to make sure that anything in your account, you're expending the oldest monies in, you're at least spending them every 15 years, so you're not talking about refunds back to the fee payers. We gave you some options here. We can increase our impact fees within the statutory phase-in limits. Still needs a study. Increase impact fees beyond those statutory phase-in limits, and then you've got to find those extraordinary circumstances exist, and then we can do nothing. You can keep it just like it is. With the updated impact fee study, the county can rename or adopt the new impact fee categories. You can make the transportation into a thoroughfare road impact fee, like what Volusia has, and then what we would do then is we pursue interlocals with all the cities. And so the thoroughfare roads, though, mind what I'm saying there, probably aren't too many. Colbert, Roberts Road. There'll be some solutions to some things we've talked about, Veranda Bay and the situation with John Anderson. So but that would also include us, though, designating those roads differently than what we have called them so far. I think the ones that I've named out just now have been at least minor collectors or maybe at the most major collectors, and so we then call them thoroughfare roads. So designating those in our plan that way, and then also generating that list of thoroughfare roads would be necessary if we did a thoroughfare road impact fee. We'd also adopt a mobility fee. That's a little different. There are some other more specific statutory requirements in the Florida Impact Fee Act to make that happen, something that peer counties had done, peer jurisdictions had done. Or we could do what St. John's did and call theirs a multimodal transportation impact fee, just to be clear, but maybe a little obscured with that. It is different than a mobility fee, but when we did mobility fees, the intent was basically in the statute to broaden it where you're just not talking about dedicating the impact fees, transportation-related impact fees, to road widening. It was getting beyond that typical response that you have for growth of, I'm just gonna add more lane miles. And so mobility fee then started looking more broadly at the entire spectrum of transportation. This works well with what you just heard about fixed route and what we're exploring there. So a multimodal transportation impact fee, to me, like what St. John's is doing, step below mobility, but could give us a chance to invest in hard capital projects related to establishing fixed route, for example. And so you could have bus stops, bus terminals that could help us with local matches on some of those monies, help us extend those funds that you heard about mentioned in some of the federal grant programs that are out there for us to establish fixed route. Law enforcement can be changed to law enforcement correctional facilities impact fee. We like that idea. We know we don't have any jail projects at this point, but be thinking 15 years out. That may be something we need to start planning for now. And so that's something that at least we've talked at the staff level and said that makes sense for us to do that. If we're going to go back and open this up, let's think about that. Library can be changed to public buildings impact fee now that we've built the Nexus Center, or we could keep the library fee, knowing again a 15-year scope with this, and then add back in public buildings, like you had heard before, like we had presented before back in 2021 in the original study. You could have both a library and public buildings out there on our books. And the final one, conservation and open space impact fee. Option for us, we could follow that St. John's example. What they've done there is they've figured, and I looked at the study to see how they did it. They took the inventory of your acreage of what you have now, purely preservation. This isn't for parks purposes. This is land that's set aside. It is called, they were specifically called out in their mapping and their planning as preserve areas, unique to the county. So not double counting or triple counting things that may be set aside by the state or by federal government. Not that we have a whole lot of those, but this would be unique lands. I'd probably say Graham Swamp maybe could qualify as one of those. Princess Place, I think for us specifically. You take that acreage, add it all up, and then divide it by the total population non-seasonal, and you get then basically a acreage per capita. And then they create a qualifier for a dollar amount to be used for future purpose to create a level of service standard for that. And that's kind of quickly how they did it in St. Johns County. We could follow that same model. If we had that same consultant or someone else, they could still use that as an example based on what St. John's had done in their study. That then could free up yet more monies. Potentially even ESL funds could then be switched to be used for another purpose. I think you had mentioned also maybe having, instead sunsetting of ESL, having it become maybe a beach preservation assessment, so another option for you to talk about. So with that, I'll close, await any questions or comments.
Ms. Carney, any questions?
So your recommendation is to provide direction to staff for impact fee update study. Where do you need us to go from here?
Out of that listing that I've given you and also in the staff report, I think probably the quick thing, I think we've understood you want us to update the impact fees, and so we will pursue that. Do you want us to pursue new fee types? What I'm looking for is help me put in the meat into the RFQ, RFP for us to move forward. If I've given you a little bit of a menu here, if you don't want to have all those or some, none, all, then give us that feedback and we'll put that in. I don't think you're obligated to any of those new fees that I've mentioned. Those are just what we've seen that's come up recently. I think that's, I don't even want to call them best practices quite yet, but we can say at least others around us are doing this. Multimodal transportation, law enforcement and correctional facilities, public buildings. I think we could go back and have that in addition to library. Conservation and open space, strictly up to you on those, on that fee.
So either way we do this, we can only increase the impact fees by X amount. We don't set it. The amount is set by the study. How is the amount of the impact fees set?
It's for our study and following what we had done before, it's a demand-based, and so there's a number provided to each of those infrastructure items, and basically on a per capita basis, so it's linked to growth, and so that it's based on consumption, based on how much of that whatever that is, that the transportation law enforcement's consumed.
So Palm Coast has them, and we have them just like taxes. Palm Coast will have impact fees, and we will have impact fees.
Yes.
And it's probable that the developer or whoever's paying the impact fee will be paying both, to the county and the city?
No.
No.
Jurisdictions
There is a
typically-
line.
There's a
Okay.
line, so that,
Okay.
and then what we will have, very likely, is we'll still have a bit of the, which one's my better parent? And so if you're having development happening along an edge, a boundary, an enclave, you'll have that kind of constant push or pull where developers are trying to find the best deal. And so that may be, and in large part it likely is, based on the impact fees that are charged.
And my senses tell me that we probably, even though we could, and we probably should add in a conservation impact fee, it's not going to be enough to replace ESL because we don't have intake in like the others. So that's probably not I mean, I think it should be if it's something that gets studied, but I don't think it would be necessarily something to replace ESL. I'm sure that if we did the study, they would show us the numbers, but
No, it's
it
just a
can't
different
match.
person paying it.
Yeah, well, but it can't match what we take in
Oh,
currently
never.
for-
I'm
never.
sure.
So it's not, I would not use that. This would be just something extra to go towards conservation.
I
and
think
open
you'd see
space.
if you looked at it in St. John's,
It's
a
another
smaller amount.
tool in the
Yep.
box.
Yes.
So the takeaway from here is, would we want to increase impact fees within the statutory limits now? Or would we like to go out and for that demonstrated need study? And then within the demonstrated need study, we can at that point look at the new types of impact fees or changing over like our library to public buildings.
I think we could do both. I think we could add the fees also, subject to legal review, that I'm maybe at least renaming some of what we have, maybe not the full palette of adding new fees, because it does seem, if you read the statute literally, you're adding, you're sticking with what you've got now, and then you're sticking within those limits at 25 or 50%, however that. And so I'm going to probably say that if you're adding a brand new one, I don't know if that's going to happen through demonstrated need, through your extraordinary circumstances.
What is the typical cost of the study if we do a demonstrated need?
Most of what we ended up seeing on the demonstrated need, we're pushing closer to towards that 150.
150.
If we're down at that lower level, and even better, we were always talking, haven't contacted our former consultant, but if there's a way for us to piggyback off of St. John's, we wanted to pursue that. And so potentially we could get it closer down to 100,000 or maybe even less as an update to what we have now.
Do we really believe, so going with what you said, do we really believe, or our senses tell us that increasing impact fees beyond the statutory phase and limit would limit annexation? I don't know that would be the case given water and other things, but do we think that, does anybody think that if you were to increase impact fees beyond the statutory phase and limits, we would drive annexation further? Maybe I'll ask Mr. Dance that. Do you have a thought on that? Think that matters in the,
I think if they were adjacent or within conclaves and things, you could do pre-annexation agreements so that's not a route that developers would take. That's not their priority decision. I mean, because that's just circumventing the need. If they're that close to the municipality, they're going to use the services. So it seems like a cop-out if they're coming through one to just later annex. We've seen it. So I don't, there's other ways to work on that too, if there's a disparity or discrepancy.
Madam Chair, could I jump in and help Commissioner Dance? So that, like with Cornerstone being the example, which is not necessarily the example, but it's the example. So when we got done with that, and it was obvious from the beginning also, a collection of a transportation impact fee on that project. Even within I believe I'm safe to say, within a 5-mile radius for roadways that were impacted, there were effectively no county roadways. And so as an example, we came back and said this doesn't make sense for us to collect the transportation impact fee, so we did the interlocal to transfer those monies to the city. So that, and I believe also, safe to say in their pre-annexation agreement that they were required to do for utilities, they actually paid the delta to the city, that difference between the county impact fees and the city impact fees.
so is it fair to say, because I wasn't here in the past, that there was a lot of stop and go with impact fees within the county, and we are sort of behind the ball overall on the costs? I can remember there was a benefit to building in the unincorporated because you didn't charge impact fees when I was building, so are we behind in impact fee collection enough to warrant a demonstrated need study? Does anybody feel that way, or?
Well, we postponed them following the recession for a number of years. I can't recall when we initiated it, but that was after a study. So we brought it back up to what the study recommended, or at the bottom end. I don't remember, but it was based on the study at the time. It's just there was a period of time where we didn't collect transportation impact fees.
If I remember right, I think that's about 10 years, maybe a little bit more, but at least from 2011 to 2021. And that reinstatement happened only in 2021, and we actually put in the Land Development Code, when those were suspended, in the Code of Ordinances, that the impact fees could only be reinstated after a study was completed.
Right.
Demonstrated need study, I don't think you necessarily have to have that level, or set out for that, and unless you think that it's an outcome that's going to indicate that there were extraordinary circumstances that have transpired over the last basically 5 years since we adopted the impact fees. So if you think that exists for us, then I'd say pursue the demonstrated need. But I'm not sure if the data really tells that out, at least for unincorporated county. Remembering also, though, still, we provide fire service to Bunnell. We provide EMS countywide. So, some of our impacts are potentially minimal, some of our impacts are not. Libraries countywide, except for Flagler Beach.
As we grow, if we're looking over the long term, we may need those fees to do that at some point sooner than later, with all the growth that everybody is traffic-wise. Everybody has a comment about the traffic. and we're going to continue to grow. Nothing is saying we're stopped. So would that be under the multimodal transportation fees, or would that be under the, fire safety fees, or, that's the questions. Where is it best brought up to look at? What's the strongest fees that would be the most viable for our community?
Let me clarify too, if I could, that I'm not wanting you to commit in any of those areas that we've talked about, that you wouldn't have to say today, transportation, that's not going to serve us well anymore. I want to do a thoroughfare road, or I want to,
Okay.
if you want to look at things, I'd like your feedback for that. So we can put in the RFP, RFQ, moving to maybe a multimodal transportation
I understand.
instead. But you don't have to commit to any of that now. Let the consultant come back with a study and tell us
Well,
if our assumptions
I
are
believe
good.
we just heard the consultant for that, as that.
Yeah, true.
So
Yes.
we've already paid for that.
We've got a bit of a need there. I think we've had that at least talked
Right.
about, if
And-
we want to head in that direction.
It's being done right
Right.
now. So it would be a shame to let that go to the wayside, and 5 years from now, go back to it and find out that it's not viable anymore. That's just my doji mentality.
So we're looking at the three options today so that you have feedback to pursue.
Yes, ma'am.
So that would be increase impact fees within statutory phase-in limits, or to increase them beyond that by ordering up a demonstrated need study, or to do nothing. I think the last time we all discussed this, we had talked about there's a possibility of needing the demonstrated need study, and that, if I can recall, that was a couple months ago. We just loosely discussed that. I feel like
Did you budget? Is it in the budget? Who's,
We draw from the impact fee proceeds so that the impact fee effectively pays for the next study. There are funds available.
I don't have enough information to say whether or not that study's needed or not.
So we'll only be taking a look at unincorporated.
Right.
I did give you in November, remember, I'm not telling you to go back and look. I gave you permit data, I gave you population data.
Did, it
and
wasn't very high.
I'm kind of telling you it really didn't do a whole lot on extraordinary need. But, I mean, if you could, and I didn't look at the other cities. We know that City of Palm Coast is, I give you both unincorporated and overall population. And so, no doubt about it, the big grower in the county is City of Palm Coast. We also had, but now with their recent project and forethought there of how that's going to impact us on the fire side. But again, they've got contributions they're going to make to us specific on fire.
So perhaps the most out of the demonstrating, because I remember our permitting was not very high, but the most that we would get out of that is if you did a demonstrated need study, it would show like perhaps fire and rescue impact fees would need to be set at a higher, because you're covering for
Correct.
municipalities that are anticipating growth.
And again, I don't want to commit you all to
Right.
fill in the blanks for the consultant. Consultant will take on some of this on their own.
If we don't do the demonstrated needs study, we still can look at adding in and changing the current impact fee schedules
Yes, ma'am.
for what types are offered.
Yes, ma'am. I think I would say within the categories we already have, we could certainly look at changing the naming of
remember
those and how the focus is on those. If it's adopting a new impact fee, I think we've got some padding there because we've done public buildings before. We looked at that before, so that's already been a study. It wasn't adopted, but I think we may talk with legal, see if that's possible. But I think we had the framework done in the previous study. I think we could just as well come back potentially and adopt public buildings. If we restudied it, updated the data, I think we'd come back and revisit that. Beyond that, newer impact fees, that conservation open space, I think we'd be hard pressed without having a demonstrated need study that would come back. You got to tell us why. Why do we need that? And so that I think comes to the demonstrated need.
Got it, okay. I'll just kind of, so we can move this along, go down and then talk to Mr. Dancer.
Yeah, I would also just check with Nassau because they recently did theirs and they did adopt the extraordinary circumstances. Not that we would, but would be interesting to see their rationale.
Sir.
Where in this process do we get feedback from the affordable housing? So remember how we talked about if it's going to impact the cost of building or construction and blah, blah, blah. It's got to go past the AHAC. At what point does AHAC get educated on this and or comment on this?
A couple of things. You do have the two public workshops if we're going through a demonstrated needs study. If we're doing the idea that we have extraordinary circumstances that exist, there's the two public workshops. We'd probably, like everything else we do, we'd route it around to all of the internal county departments, and so there'd be some comment on that. Remind everybody here also, still affordable housing is exempt. I don't see that exemption
Right.
changing, but that would still have everybody getting a chance to look at it, review it before we bring it back to the board, ultimately for adoption. So in the least, that would happen. And let me clarify maybe one point. We did talk about the comprehensive impact fee ordinance. We put a lot of time into that. That ordinance isn't going to be upended. What we're talking about doing with that is, if you remember and you look at Chapter 17 of our Code of Ordinances, there are fee tables that were adopted through that ordinance. The study gives us the fees. The fee tables are adopted in the updated ordinance. The bulk of the comprehensive impact fee ordinance is going to stay the same. We've got a couple of definitions we know we need to change. We talked about some confusing language in there for single-family duplexes and multifamily. We've got to fix that. But we would do that likely with local resources using the staff of the county attorney's office. And so we'll bring back that ordinance. But for the most part, comprehensive impact fee ordinance is going to stay the same. Exemptions, all that stuff's going to stay the same.
I just know the committee, when they see the word, the two words impact fees, they get a little
Sure.
concerned, especially with what happened in Palm Coast. So if Ms. Simone can just update the AHAC on what we're doing or what we're
We'll do that.
thinking about, just to get them on board. Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you.
I just want to confirm, it says here with updated impact fee study, the county can rename or adopt, but that's not the demonstrated need study. It says it here on your slide, with updated impact fee study, the county can then rename or adopt new impact fee categories.
I think that's still true. I know I didn't.
I think it makes,
Prep
I
the
think
county
it makes
attorney
all
for
the
this.
difference in
Sure.
whether or not we would push forward. But
I think renaming is adopting new. I think may be demonstrated need.
I think, so that's where I come into, I think that I would like to look at the conservation and open space impact fee. Does anybody else feel like that's an option to look at as an additional mechanism? I don't want to say it's replacing ESL, that's not.
Right. No, as soon as I read months ago that St. John's had it, and, I shared it because I thought that would be definitely viable. I don't know that we will find extraordinary circumstances here, but I would like the option to see what the fee is as an option.
We could do that. We can put that out.
I feel like you can probably get that number before we commit to a study by just doing it like an exercise on the 2025 numbers versus what the option, you know what I mean? To see if it's worth it, So as it sits right now, I guess we'll just need us to let us know if we would have to commit to a demonstrated needs study in order to look at adopting new types of impact fees or changing impact fee types specific to law enforcement, being a correctional facility or library flipping over to the public building. So I think the board would just need to know if that is a necessity to do the demonstrated needs study in order to change the way we collect fees, what fees we collect, I guess. So that's important takeaway. And I feel like I need to know that before, otherwise I don't think the demonstrated needs study, based on the permit numbers you gave us, show that the unincorporated county is really, we're a victim of everyone else's growth.
I think you're right, and I think that's what's going to hold out for us. But we can also leave that to the consultant, and so we could advertise it as the worst case, same as we had done last time.
Right.
And so in the case when we were adopting those fees that were held in suspense, we were extra cautious. We held the two workshops, so we would potentially follow a similar process again of caution as if we were adopting under the demonstrated need, even if ultimately we don't have the extraordinary circumstances that exist. And so I think we'll probably follow with that path. I think I'm hearing you loud and clear that we'll go ahead and put it in the hands of a consultant. We'll put out RFP, RFQ. We'll see what comes back. We'll hopefully see you in a month or two, and we'll go from there.
Is that what, Everyone okay with?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to fiscal year 27 budget staff report and the kickoff presentation. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair. John Brower, Financial Services. Here to give you a little presentation to set us up for the kickoff that we're going to give tomorrow to the constitutional officers and our departments to create the FY27 budget. You guys hear me? Okay. We're going to discuss today the budget process. We're going to review the calendar, the budget factors that are involved in the creation of the budget, what we identified as our core services, and community enhancement services, or the quality of life things that were recognized, and of course alternative funding options, as we all want to diversify our revenue sources so we can provide the services. Doing double duty here. And so the overall budget process, right now we're in the pre-budget phase, and that phase ends basically today or tomorrow when we give the kickoff information to the departments and the constitutional officers. This started a few months ago when we just started reviewing last year's budget, how that was presented, and moving into this budget, what we want to continue, what we want to add. The budget development is the next process, next phase, and that's where we give that direction to the departments and the constitutional officers, and they prepare their budgets based on their direction and their needs. Budget review comes when we get all the budgets from the departments, the constitutional officers, and the county administrator, sits with each of them and discusses basically, at least on the board side, each line item, what they need, why it's a certain amount, what they need, any kind of decision units that they need to continue their services or provide additional services if they think it's worth requesting. Citizen engagement comes throughout the summer, springtime, through board meetings and online dashboards, those types of things. The board adoption and approval process comes in September. Those are our two public hearings. And then, of course, after that, October 1st, communicating what the budget was, what budget's creating, and how we report that out to the external folks through our budget book, our website, those types of things. Here's our budget calendar that's being proposed. This is the same format that we've used in past years. I'm sure it looks familiar. It's an overall look at the process for the entire budget year. On the left side of the external public dates with the board, meeting with the board, those types of things. And on the right are internal dates for staff meetings, things where staff and departments are meeting with OMB and the county administration to create the budget. Of course, if there's any questions along the way, I'd be happy to discuss. Budget preparation timeline, another view of this, more narrowed down. We discussed already from December and even earlier up to today. This is the initial planning and guidelines we're going to confirm with you all, although this isn't the final thing. You guys can change and adapt and adjust along the way. This is just initial guidance for budget creation. The March, April is when the departments and constitutional officers work on their budgets, decide what they need to continue the operations that either they're doing now or directed to add or take off, those types of things. Any decision units that they might need to perform their operations. May, June, it's when we meet with you all with what we know up to that point to create the tentative budget. And in July, we get the property values from the certified property values from the property appraiser and adjust the revenues based on that information. And we also bring that tentative budget to you in the middle, I guess, the middle of July this year to present you with the tentative budget and also ask you to set the preliminary millage rates. We have all throughout the summer meetings that's on the calendar right now to meet with you to adjust the tentative budget as you see fit, and leading into those September trim and public hearing that we have to adopt the budget. And of course, end of the year, we start monitoring the current budget and actually start the next budget. So this is the slide that you saw last month. If you recall, we had one-on-one meetings with each of you to discuss your vision and what's interested to you as we build the budget. We received the feedback and we fine-tune our kickoff direction because of it. As always, we're going to start with our strategic plan. Anything that's requested or that's in the budget needs to align with the strategic plan, either one of four sections there: effective government, economic vitality, growth and infrastructure, public health and safety. Economic impacts and financial visibility are always considered when we're building the budget. Leverage available sources of funding, we're always doing that, and there's even more of a focus this year. As you can see on the last bullet there is effective financial planning. We have to understand that it's very important, since we're such a small county still, even though we're growing, that we have to be very effective in understanding what our revenues are and what our possibilities are moving forward. So as the kickoff instructions we're going to have, even though we haven't decided yet, the board hasn't decided if they want a flat or reduced budget or reduced millage rate, we are going to share with everyone when they're creating their budget to expect their operating budgets to be smaller, reduced, or less than previous year. And as a budget, instead of saying we're going to cut the millage rate by 1/10 or something right now, that can be done at a later date, as long as it's communicated, and when it's preliminary set in July, that'll be the date that you set the highest that you would want, because you can go lower than that amount, you just can't go higher. Also, from the one-on-ones, we got to support the infrastructure, which was identified as the beach and dunes, roads, of course, and stormwater. To find our core services, which you'll see at the next slide, that we're going to go with infrastructure, public safety, constitutional officers will be our main focus. Of course, explore alternative funding options and more of a focus this year on asking departments to look into alternative ways for them to provide the services that they currently do, in addition to alternative funding for paying for those services. Also, under consideration is, of course, the legislative impacts that we just, we think we know now, but we don't really know until June what's going to happen in July, and then what's going to happen potentially in November when things are voted on. But we do have to adjust for those and consider those as we're building our budget, incorporating the board's goals and the policy direction that we've received so far. The allocation of the constitutional officers, their budget is a large part of our budget, and they have their work to do as well as the board side has their work to do. So balancing the two can be challenging. Things that we must pay, CPI increases, contractual increases, those type of things, unfunded mandates, in addition to the mandated services there, all are costs that are really out of our control. We're just told what the increases are, and we have to figure out a way to fit them in the budget. And the economic environment, what we know currently and what we can expect or project that's going to be in the future, even a year and a half into the future for the one-year budget that we create. As mentioned, the infrastructure priorities, the beach and dune restoration, the stormwater improvements, road improvement, and really how we can fund them. These are large cost items that we would struggle to pay for with existing revenue without, making many changes. And so we have to figure out how to pay for them. Do we just do the general revenue, move some things around, find grants, special assessments, those types of things? We'll discuss some of these in just a few minutes. So the core services, as mentioned, we already said infrastructure. There's public safety, and of course our constitutional officers, clerk of court, supervisor of elections, property appraiser, tax collector, the sheriff, largest of which is the law enforcement, jail, that we contract with him to run for us, and the bailiffs, public safety, fire rescue, flight operations, emergency management, 911 dispatch, CAD, the sheriff's internal charges that we have in our general fund, and of course the health department. The asterisks that you see there are areas where we've identified alternative possible funding sources. And we'll discuss those in a minute. So to support the core services are the support areas of the county, which include county administration, legal, HR, IT, financial services, facilities to take care of our buildings, fleet, communications, and then some of the other things that we're required to provide. Inmate medical, indigent burials, medical examiners, cadaver, transportation, those type of things. These are all things that are out of our control really to pay, but we have to pay every year. The community enhancement services, another way of saying that is our quality of life services that we provide the community. These are things that are not required for us to have, but we do, and we have them and we fund them and have for a while. Engineering, veteran services, parks and rec, public transportation, library services, HHS, ag extension, land management, economic development, animal control, lifeguards, things like the 4th of July celebration, and some gyms, some youth center and the Carver Center. Again, the asterisk are things that we can identify alternative funding sources for. Some of the alternative funding options are listed here. We can talk about each one if you like. I'll just briefly go through them. MSTU, Municipal Services Taxing Unit, is a tax on the property valuations. It's a millage rate. MSBU is a benefit unit. Properties need to be identified within the benefit unit and are charged according to the benefit that that property receives for whatever the services is. ILAs, which is for our purposes would be cost sharing with other entities, other municipalities that the board currently funds arguably a disproportionate share of. User fees, just charges for services that we don't charge now. An example, going into a park to pay a parking fee, those types of things. Enterprise funds which is a way to separate business-type activities into its own fund and then charge fees to either the general fund or other funds with other funding sources to help pay for those services. For example, fleet. There are many areas that have enterprise fund for fleet. Special districts is areas that can be created with its own funding source for the different services that we're able to do. It can be either a taxing type unit with a millage or a special assessment. So the asterisks that we mentioned earlier, these are the list of those. Sheriff, law enforcement, another way to fund that service is through an MSTU or interlocal agreements with other municipalities. Fire and rescue, EMS, same type of thing, MSTU, taxing unit or benefit unit. 911 dispatch, ILAs, CAD, ILAs again. Fleet, mentioned that earlier about the enterprise funds, and we would charge user fees for their services. Library services can be an MSTU or a special district can be created to fund that. And Parks and Recreation, same type of thing, but we'd add some fees on there too. And animal control, MSTU or special district for MSTU. So what we're asking for today is just for you to basically approve the direction that we have right now and that we're going to give to the departments and the constitutional officers. Again, this is not written in stone. These things can be changed throughout the process up until we adopt the budget. But the kickoff is scheduled for tomorrow. We have 2 meetings, one with each the departments and the constitutional officers to kind of relay this information that I've given you today that we're going to create the budget on. And then, of course, according to the budget calendar, we're going to have many times to discuss the creation of the budget, including as we break them down, the general fund or the CIP. That's all throughout the process in the summer. So that's all I have for you today.
We'll start with any questions, comments, direction back for constitutionals that we'd like to give now, or anything? I'll look down this way.
I have a simple question. Nowhere did it say anything, and I'm assuming it's a separate budget. Is the mosquito control? Or does that go under one of these?
No, that's not. They're their own
Separate.
There's
Okay.
your own government.
Yeah, I know. I'm not the only one who may be thinking about it. There might be somebody getting bit by a mosquito right now. Thank you.
There's always one.
There's always one.
Any questions on? I guess not.
I guess we just, it sounds like it's going to happen. I mean, we just need to ask them to hold the line. I mean, it's way too early, right? So they put their best foot forward now, and the meetings start, and they discuss what they need, right?
Right.
Any increases over a prior year? Hopefully, they've got them
Madam
pegged
Chair,
down.
basically that's what we do. And this year we actually said expect the year operating to be lower than previous.
Correct.
But when we have to pay a contract and the contract says it's going to increase 3%, I mean, those are required increases. Any other increase is required to be submitted via what we call a decision unit, which is, just explaining, what what they're requesting to be increased, why, the support documentation, those kind of things. And those are specially discussed in the board budget meetings in May, I believe.
Yeah, because that'll go
Yeah.
in front of us, because last year we let it through that the clerk, I think, asked to bring up staff to at least a minimum of $20 an hour. But we have our own staff that are under $20 an hour out in Road and Bridge, and so I don't anticipate that happening again. We're going to handle, hopefully, our staff before we allow that to come back through. That's just my opinion.
To, I'm sorry, Miss, I didn't understand what you meant.
Well, I just remember it being, I think we need to, just manage the expectations from the constitutionals this year very closely. And if there is any discussions about bringing staff their staff funding up, we've got our own staff we need to start looking at that for. So
Sure.
just
And
if
it's
you hear it, I just hope that's shared early on with us so that we can.
Well, their budgets are due, most of them are due June 1st. The tax collector, they come in August, but they're fee-based, so we know
Yeah.
what they're going to be regardless of, we just know what the property values are going to be, and we just, calculate their fees based on that. So it's not a big deal that she comes in August. But yeah, June 1st is when we get their information.
Right. I don't really have any takeaways. Do you, Mr. Dance? Anything from you?
Yeah, I think my message would be that this is kind of, this is our transition year between the last year of how we've done things, because 28 is going to be a whole different animal. So we have to have the mindset that we're going to preserve and protect, and reduce where we can. Reduce new recurring obligations. Right, we've got limited, I think one of our responsibilities is we've got limited capital funds. So over the course of the budget, we're going to need to prioritize and look at where those capital funds are going so that we can keep up to a degree. I mean, we're in a constant catch-up mode, but I think staff would like that input as to where we're going to divvy up our capital funds. It's early in the process. I think our budget's going to be based on new construction. It's not as much as it's been in the past, and stagnant property values. I mean, the realtors are here to speak to that, but it's. I just think the mentality has to be that this is going to be a tight year because we're transitioning to an unknown reality. I do think MSBUs are the only ones that need to be completed by December. Is that right? The other ones we have the ability to do anytime. Interlocals, MSTUs, special districts.
Right, I believe that's correct.
I do think the thought process of MSTUs is something that we can spend the summer looking at, probably more for implementation in 28 than implementation this year. But that transition is going to take a lot of coordination with affected parties. Say it's the sheriff's office, and I mean that's going to take a long time to work through. But we probably should over the summer figure out where those have a higher probability of being accomplished. And I would just, again, we all work on consensus, so we all get together to give direction to staff. We've done really well in making sure that our thoughts are cemented in July, so that we are not having off-the-wall requests in September and October, because those really have negative effects on staff. By that time, they have spent the entire year working on the budget, and they rely on us to be consistent in thought and process through that point. And up until July, we should all be on the same page.
Yeah, we welcome any input the board has as we move forward, especially in the short term. The more you can fine-tune what you're looking for, what you want, and we can put it in the budget. We don't have to make those adjustments in late August as we move towards the time deadlines that we have for the public hearings. I will add, the county administrator has already asked to look into consultants for different funding sources to identify those and if assuming we move forward, what we can do for each service that we're doing. So we understand that any of the big property value or ad valorem type impacts from the legislature is going to obviously go to the referendum in November to take in effect. It'll affect our 28 budget, not this next budget, but the following one. So we have some time. I think once we know in July what they're actually going to move forward with, if anything, we could start fine tuning how we're going to address the potential for the loss of the ad valorem revenue. So we have a plan. We just need some more information as we move forward, that's all.
I don't think I've seen it. Has anybody seen within all the proposed amendments to property tax, any discussion about MSBUs and TUs? Whether they're going to be allowed, or
No.
they don't really address that? Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair.
I had a couple things. Are you done,
Um,
Andy?
Thank you.
Okay. So, a couple things. So, let's say you have a department head who's preparing his or her budget, and they've been doing it the same way over and over and over and over. We have a lot of long-term staff. Do you have tools, training, or resources to help a budgeting manager look for other ways? I mean, I just know myself, if I'm sitting here doing it the same way every year, that process is not developed as to how you save 10% on, I know this is the weeds, travel and training. How do you save 10% on? Is there some way, are we just doing the same things over and over again, or do we have some ways to help our staff?
No, so OMB staff and the analysts, every year, they go into their specific department's budget. They remove any one-time type enhancements to get it down to kind of the base level. And then they'll go in line by line and identify based on previous year's actuals, which, if anything, stands out. So, you budget $10,000 for something. In the last 3 years, they've spent $800. That'll be raised and questioned. And when we have the meetings with the departments and the county administrator and OMB every single year, the county administrator goes through line by line. And if things stick out, she questions them. There are many times
But that
things
doesn't
are
help
moved
with,
around.
that doesn't help with efficiencies. So are we putting staff in a situation where they can go and learn how other of their peers are doing? How are they delivering the service? How are they collecting debt that we don't? I mean, I don't know. There's so many scenarios, you know that, right, John?
course,
that I can't possibly come up with every one. But I would encourage that if there's not a feel for how could I do this differently, right? The best product, the best price at the best time, then we need to start encouraging that creative thinking and that base in why they are managers, and it's to manage. So I don't want to be on a high horse on that. I do it enough. But I would like to make sure that our staff is getting what they need to make those informed decisions. I have another question. I heard from a Palm Coast elected official that that the county has already approached them on condensing fire services, consolidation. I don't remember this board in any way giving any direction to anybody to go talk to Palm Coast about consolidation of services. And I would like consensus that nobody from the county talks to anyone about consolidation of services until we get a little bit deeper into this process. By no means should we be doing this in January during the year. Nor, we heard the same thing about lifeguards in Flagler Beach. We are way too busy, way too early in this process to be using the word consolidation. So I hope the head nodding means and I hope Mrs. Petito sees it, we do not want discussions about consolidation going out to our public at this point. And it has happened. So I would like to make sure, Chair, you can handle that consensus however you want to. And my third item is in doing some research on what type of resources we have to us. I did contact the Florida City County Managers Association, and a lot of prior, retired, once were managers or administrators have retired, and they are now serving as senior advisors. These senior advisors help us deal with specific issues. So if we need to deal with cutting budgets, or we need to deal with capital improvement planning, or we need to deal with MSBUs, MSTUs, there's people out there that have done all of this before us. And I know we have some expertise, but it is a resource that we might want to tap into as we get further along in this process. So if you're not familiar with them or you're interested, I spoke with Chris Hawley, and I have his phone number. That's all.
Can I just say a short thing? When you were discussing this calendar, and you said there's a possibility of changing these dates or these timeframes, correct? It's an adjustment. How would we go about doing that with your office, other than we would bring it to the administrator? I'm asking you that because I wasn't aware of this last year, so thank you for presenting that to me. Not to say that any of these are bad days, but there's going to be times when maybe 4 of us right now are available. So, do we have to have all 5? And that's my question to you.
Yeah,
is
Madam
what
Chair,
would be
the
paramount?
this is it's put out there as the schedule to do things, but that doesn't mean things can't be changed all throughout the process. It's how we are going to do things as of today. If you needed to change a meeting, from the 15th to the 18th, it's not a problem. It would just
Okay.
be changed, and we'd communicate
I
with
just
everyone.
want to make sure that, everybody's capable of making, because sometimes we've had, like today, we have 4 people here today, so we're missing another piece of us, and it happens. It happens often, so
Yeah,
just want to make sure that.
it's not a
So if I
problem at all.
talk to you today, can she talk to you tomorrow? Over the same thing? Well,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
just so
ma'am.
we do have some kind
Yep,
of
and,
understanding.
This is the board's kind of schedule to create the budget, and we're going to,
Okay,
play the way you guys want to play.
excellent, thank you.
In regards to consolidation, we did have a discussion, not specific to that, but we had a public discussion where there was a consensus to allow our staff to look anywhere there could be consolidation with another municipality on anything, just have the discussions. I recall that. Am I wrong in that? Or
Efficiencies,
yeah,
consolidation.
efficiencies. It's like an exercise they were going to do with each other in case things got bad. It was 2 meetings ago, I believe, where we all came to a consensus on that. So it was like to look at, and I know it wasn't specific to that department. It wasn't said specifically that department, but I think that could be how that department would have been lumped into that. But it was also, gosh, I have to think of some examples that were given. But it was basically, do I have that in case we have to do these exercises and worst-case scenarios in property tax? So I don't think it was meant specifically for
So
that one, but
Was the outcome of that to come back and discuss the items that were discussed?
there may be no appetite from any municipality to consolidate. So it was almost just giving Ms. Petito the option of having discussions with other administrators throughout the county of, if, in an effort to save taxpayers' money, are there any ability to consolidate? Because we know that some operate their own policing, some operate their own fire.
Okay.
And not just that, but I think like building departments, I mean, like doing permitting for some of them, we do it for
Is that how the
marine land.
health insurance came up?
Health insurance.
Yeah, okay.
So it was just like, we did give a consensus. It just wasn't very clear, because who wants to put it out there that that could be a possibility of a
Right.
discussion? Nobody wants to, because we don't want to upset people. We're not, it's an exercise in case they come back tomorrow and say, cut deep, and we're not prepared. And so it was just simply an exercise. So I think that's one of those areas where that could be a discussion, but does not mean that they're willing, able, and ready to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, and I certainly wouldn't want the public to think, that we're doing that. It's just where can we all consolidate if we had to? So I think that was the consensus the last time. But it was not specific to departments, but that would be obviously, I think, one of those areas. So apologies if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, and I don't want to be one holding back on some of those efficiencies, especially if there's receptive dialogue going on. And not that it means it's happening immediately, because I think some of this was geared toward the 28 budget when we could be faced with more dire consequences. But I would say, in my position, it's proceed. And then on staff, a point to be made on staff and continuing education. ICG is putting together, that's the Institute for County Governments, putting together staff level courses with just the purpose of doing best practices on many specific issues. So I would assume you'll probably hear some things from ICG in the near term to where staff can, I think, geared toward even like a certification if you do certain things, but finance, budget, all kinds of things will be included in that, which I think will help address, because we're all doing the same thing. We need to share our best practices and learn from others.
But to Ms. Carney's point, obviously, if it rises to the level where you look like we are going to have serious discussions about consolidation, I think the board needs to be apprised of that sooner than later.
At the joint meeting, somebody came up to me and asked me about some of monies from our funds that could assist their needs. And I thought that was interesting. So it's a reversal. Sometimes when people think we're the big papa and we got all the money, and they may have more liberal funds than we do. Ours are pretty well appointed. I think it was 81% is to constitutionals. That gives us 19%.
And core services.
What is it?
It's the I did find out clarification. Constitutionals in our core services.
And our,
Yeah.
so it's both?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was misquoted.
Well, then gives me a little bit more breathing room, but I'm always very cautious on
I know.
money.
It's still.
It's
a lot,
really,
right?
it's
Still
not our
leaves very
money.
little.
It's our constituents' money, and every dollar matters to them. So
All right.
want to be respectful of that.
Thank you, Mr. Brower.
Thank you,
Great
Madam Chair.
job. Thank
Appreciate
you, Mr. Brower.
Before we go out to public comment, any other items needed for discussion? Ms. Petito, did you need anything for us, or Mr. Rodriguez regarding this evening?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Nope. Any discussions by the board on any other topics before we go to public comment? No, we feel like we've discussed. Okay.
Do you feel we're going to push our time limit, our maximum time limit tonight?
Oh no, don't jinx me.
I was just going to say it was the
I do. I need to
quickest.
go home and nap for that.
Yeah, this
for
is the
tonight.
quickest so far that I can remember of our meeting today. So I'm excited about that.
And for the sake of time, I have something for tonight under comments. If you'd like me to present it now, it doesn't matter if it's now or under comments.
No, we'll wait till our commissioner comments for everything. Public comment. This 30-minute time period has been allocated for public comment, and each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. We have public. Go ahead. Good afternoon, sir.
Steve Davis. I live in Painters Hill on the ocean. I have a question about how the calendar and the process of budget considerations will be impacted, changed, affected by the legislative calendar in Tallahassee. If a referendum to eliminate, reduce, stage, whatever, ad valorem taxes over the next several years gets put on the November ballot in June or July, do we as a county need to react to that with any planning for next year's budget? And how would our planning and calendar be affected if a referendum passes in November? I heard some of that beginning to be discussed in the last few minutes, but I don't have from the presentation or my personal knowledge an understanding of how those things will interact.
Yeah, I'll let you finish out your time, and then I'll try to answer it, and we'll try to answer it. Anything else you'd like?
Call it.
You'll call it, okay. And I'll let Mr. Dance and everyone else, Ms. Carney and everyone weigh in on that. I believe we started the early discussions about MSU, TU, and BU and giving direction to staff for that, which would be a big, although I'm not certain those are going to be allowed, or if they're intending to fund at the state level, like police. It's been very confusing to us. But the staff showed you the mechanisms of funding our core services and our other services as best we can. We'll need to early on, maybe earlier than July, I think, start to drive the discussions about MSTUs, BUs, interlocals, and all of that so that we can be prepared for 28. So that is the anticipation right now, I believe. If anybody else wants to add in, Mr. Dance.
Yeah, I would say once we know at the end of session what they're going to be putting on the ballot, we should have some good guidance to start working. And they will give us an implementation time. So it could be effective for the 28 budget or potentially the 29 budget. We don't know when they're going to implement it. Some are phased, so there'll be phased plans that we'll have to look at. But I would say once the session is over and we kind of have an idea of what that language is going to be, we can start working on how that's going to impact us almost immediately. But it won't be effective until the following year or the year after, once we find out what that implementation date is.
We do have additional workshops as needed scheduled as well on that list that he published. So I imagine we're going to end up taking those to work through it. That's where they put us. We appreciate it.
David Eckert, Kelly Del Sur. I just wanted to raise the issue that I think you're missing a big opportunity on the revenue side to let this time lapse between this year and next year. And could it be harmful to the citizens from an information providing standpoint, but it also could be disadvantageous to the county relative to showing your cards from the county to the state first, rather than waiting for the state to show their cards to the counties and the cities first. And what I mean by that is that the revenue side is the side that's affected, not the cost side within the budget. The costs are what they are to be able to run. So on the revenue side, of course, going through the 26-27 budget, can be assumed that the ad valorem is going to be continuing, obviously, regardless of what the referendum vote is going to be. If I were working for the county and were in any of these departments, it's very easy for me to just separate out certain costs that are delineated towards services that come from the ad valorem revenue. They don't have to get involved in that. But once you separate out that work that occurs in each one of these constitutional departments and also in the administration, it can be earmarked as something that can be specifically identified with a geography, a product that's provided, and so forth. And that sets up the boxes that the revenue flows into. So if you wanted to mimic what the revenue side could change to under a certain outcome from both the legislation that's passed by the state as well as the referendum vote, you could provide tremendous amount of information to the citizens about how that might look. Because right now, they have no idea as to how you could easily accomplish all of the services that you're providing by MSBUs, probably not MSTUs, by MSBUs and districts that are aligned in a way to make up for the revenue that's going to be lost by the ad valorem tax for homesteaded properties. That would give them information during this budget process that they would have in July, August, before the November vote, so that when they voted for the November vote on the referendum, if there's several options, as to how the county is set up to be able to prepare, to be able to protect themselves so that it's not just a big confusion aspect as to how they should vote. The other aspects is for the employees within the departments, they could also be reassured. So you're worrying about they're all going to be all very concerned about this process. It's a very calming process to go through this because you can show it's not the end of the world because you can make this transition. The county will run fine, the state will run fine. And if the state sees you doing that, and they see that you need money, whether it's from sales tax at the state level or some other then you're set up to be able to show that you're going to lead in this parade. You don't want to follow or lead from the behind. You want to lead from the front on this issue and say, we're confident that our staff and our citizens will support this transition, because the one thing that we know for sure is the ad valorem cost with the run-up in the property value and the insurance cost and so forth, that there's no tie now between the revenue side and what people are getting. And that makes the whole revenue side of the state appear to be out of control relative to the lock-in as to the services people get versus who's paying for those services. So I think you're really missing the opportunity. And I don't think it's a lot of additional work to take the revenue coming from ad valorem for, an 18-month forward, and just rather than just stick it into general funds, stick it into the categories that then could easily be set up as the districts and the MSBUs and so forth in preparation for the following year.
Thank you, Mr. Eckert. Any other comments? If not, I'll close public comment. Anyone want to address anything else before we move to adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
All right, I told Michael I might be done by 3 o'clock.